well, we got a big group. You guys scrunched to the middle. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. And unfortunately, I'm going to be sitting towards the back of the room so I don't get to see your smiling faces. We'll try to keep this light and keep it moving forward quickly. Okay? So what we're going to be talking about today. Function is, the projector is, let's get this set up. Okay, so anybody surprised by ending up in the ePay class? I won't be offended if you leave now. I won't be offended if you leave in the middle. All right, so I'm kidding. You can really get up, okay? I'm not going to force you to be here. But this is really cool stuff. So this is what we're going to be talking about, the objectives. And I published this for you in the training conference materials. Okay? And this document goes through and it illustrates the workflows we're going to be talking about today. There's some design considerations in there. My e-filing is also out there, and examples of business rules. You can tie all this stuff in with your normal JustWare stuff, so notification templates, and I've got examples of how that works in those documents online. Okay, but this is what our objective is. So learn how to set up ePayments in JusticeWeb. Learn how to set up the system to accept traffic tickets, class fees, court costs, fines and fees, that kind of stuff. We will also explore setting up payment schedules, how that affects what the users see in JusticeWeb. And we'll look at public versus private or just payments in JustWare and those concepts. So that's what our objective is. We'll run through a couple of scenarios. I've got some business rules set up so I can show you how that interacts with JusticeWeb and the users, some tools that you can use, okay? So I talk really fast, and I apologize. I will try to pay attention to that, but when I get excited, I talk even faster. And I love this. This excites me, okay? So these documents, where can you find those? If you go out to training.newdawn.com, right there under the conference materials, click on that link, and right here, configure ePay using JusticeWeb and configure e-filing using JusticeWeb. That's where we're going to find that document that I had pulled up. Okay? So the first thing we need to do before we jump into that document then is look. Just change that on me again. We need to look at what is JusticeWeb. Okay? Is JusticeWeb what you want? Is that what you need? All of the E stuff that you've heard about in conference is JusticeWeb except eCourt. Okay? eCourt is case management. So when we're talking about JusticeWeb, we're talking about e-filing, e-view, e-payments, and e-discovery. So JusticeWeb is not your tool if you're looking to grab a bulk of information and take it from JustWare and put it somewhere else in another system. Or grab a bulk of information from another system and bring that and put it into JustWare. That is not your tool. Okay? JusticeWeb is designed for eView. This is, you can take stuff from your system and display reports. So your court calendar, if you wanted to publish that on the web or on your website, or you had a kiosk that people walked in front of and you wanted to show them, here's all the events that are going on for the day. eView would work for you. That is a JusticeWeb thing. Okay? You can also provide public access where people can search on a name or on a court number, a docket number, and pull up information that you want them to see on that. That's eView. This will work for you. And that works inside of JusticeWeb. E-filing. Okay? E-filing has a couple of concepts. One is discovery. You want to expose like prosecutors with their discovery packets. It's like a zip file of all these case files, electronic documents that they want to expose on the web. That would be we're on e-filing. E-filing. File cases. So, hey, you want to file a complaint with our department or our court. You can expose that through e-filing. You want to upload documents. So I want to file for extension, or I got a petition, or I got a court document that I need to file. You can do that through e-filing, as well as other case information. E-discovery, packets of information, or individual documents from your filing cabinet. You can attach pricing to those, so you can have people pay for discovery. You can make that free. You can bill them later. It's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with that discovery. And you can track whether they were actually able to download it or not. Kind of nice. ePayments, this is what we're going to be talking about here. This is public payments. So you got traffic tickets. They can make case payments, and of course they can pay for discovery and filing fees. So we're going to be using a payment gateway. In order to use ePay in JusticeWeb, you must sign up with a payment provider. We have two that by default we've got programmed to work with JusticeWeb. That's Mercury Payments and Plug and Pay. There is an API if you have your own payment provider today. And then you would write the API to work with your payment provider. So for these examples, we're going to use Mercury. It's not because I'm endorsing them, but it's one of those options that we have, and that's the one we're using today. Okay? So that's ePay. So is JusticeWeb right for you? Well, we're going to find out more about a specific part of JusticeWeb in this class. All right, everybody's still in the right place. Well, all right. Here we go. So in this document, let's run through this really quick so you know what's in there. So the objectives. There's some design considerations. Woo. Let's get that up on the screen. It's on my screen, not yours. But it's a big screen if you get really close. That's what I tell my kids with their little 32-inch home. All right. Design considerations. Before you begin configuring ePay, please note the items below. So we're just going to hit on this before we jump in and start looking at how to configure it. Number one, JusticeWeb ePay applies payments using JustWare's auto allocation methodology. So if you don't use JustWare auto allocation in your agency, you might want to figure that out before you apply JusticeWeb ePayments to your system. And I pulled this little snippet right from the help guide. If you don't know how JustWare auto allocations work, it's in the help guide. Please hit your F1 key in JustWare and find out how that works.
So you're saying it has to use auto allocate?
Yes. Number two, when we're looking, and I may get a question about that, it's fine, but know that right here, design consideration, when you're looking at the account summary in JusticeWeb, it will show the next 3 payments that are due, not all the payments that are due, just the next 3, and the last 3 payments made. That is it. It's not a full history, okay? But you can provide that history if you need. Payment schedule names will be displayed on the payment screen. If you're not used to your payment schedules or payment plans, the name of those being exposed to your customers, they will here. So make sure they're customer friendly, please. This is what they look like. So right here, find payment plan. Just goes right in line with the other fees and costs. If you restrict types of obligations that can be paid online, and you have a mix of those. Some you can pay online and others that cannot. Customers will not be able to use public payments. So here's some of the settings that you can set. So you can expose by case type, and only certain case types can be paid online. Statuses. Case has to be in a certain status. Maybe you don't want to pay in warrant cases online. Or closed cases. We shouldn't even have payments on those, right? So you get to determine that. Obligation types. You select the obligation types that can be set. A single JusticeWeb instance can be configured. Notice the little asterisk, okay? It can be configured to publish for multiple collecting agencies. So like the Navajo Nation, you guys have 12 different districts. How would that look? Right here we've got two different collecting agencies. They show up in different places and they each have their make a payment option. Okay? That's because when you make a payment, that money needs to make it to a bank account. If you have your own bank account and it is not shared, you need to make sure that money gets directed into the right bank account, right? So, different payment collecting agencies. I don't know that we'll have time to run through that. So, design considerations. There's some things. Read the help guide. It's great. They spent a lot of time on it. There's a lot of great tips and hints and notices. Okay? They describe how to set all this stuff up. So, we're going to be talking about payment requests and public payment requests. So this goes through and shows you how we set those up, how it looks, and guess what? There's a review. So you can take this home, you can train your folks, and you can give them the review questions. Okay? Just like I've got for you. So take this home, work through those. I'm going to ask some questions because I want you to think about how you're processing those payments. Essentially what you're doing with JusticeWeb is you are offloading. You are offloading your work to someone else, to the public, right? You're saying, I'm not going to enter your credit card information and wait there in anticipation to see if your credit card is authorized. You're going to enter that payment information, okay? So what happens if a credit card is declined? How do you avoid it? We're going to have a couple of things. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, but we'll have a simple workflow and we'll have one that has like 3 pages in there. So we will look at that just a little bit, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on there. So this goes through, shows you the pages that I'm using, how that translates on the web. Okay, so this is what we're going to be looking at. Do not click the close button. Okay, so that's the document. Still in the right place, and do we have a question? Before we just...
Does the system, whether web or JustWare itself, store the credit card information? Or is it just a portal to your third?
Okay, great question. Great question. What do you guys think? Do we store the credit card information?
No.
No. If you store credit card information, your agency must be PCI compliant. Okay? That's time consuming, takes money. Newton, do we need to be PCI compliant to make this work? No. What we do is we transfer that information to a place that is PCI compliant. Mercury, Plug and Pay, your payment processor. They are PCI compliant. Great question. We do not store that information in JustWare, and we'll actually show you where we make that seamless transition to the payment processor, where they're capturing that information. Okay, great. All right, so this is JusticeWeb. When you first hit the page, it'll have a basic home page. You can put your own logo up there, you can put your own text in here, and you define what request types, these are called requests, are exposed to your users. The ones we're going to be talking about in this class is the ePay, fine or a ticket, and the payments. Okay, so I have what's called a payment, a public payment request. When I'm not even signed in, I can expose a public payment. Now the concept behind the public payment was designed that you pay in full. This is for a traffic ticket. Somebody's driving through your city, through your jurisdiction, through your state. They get pulled over, they get a traffic ticket, they go home, they want to pay that online. They will pay that in full. Okay? So for this, there's some requirements, and let's look at that page. So in JusticeWeb, this is where we're working. JusticeWeb Administration. So how do I get here? Under the administrative tools, there's a JusticeWeb link if this is installed for you. If it is not, please talk to Ben Stocks or Jeremy Gledhill, and they will work that out with you. Okay? Once that's in there, you have this system administration area. You also have this little JusticeWeb help. It is online. It is fabulous. I've read it. I would expect that if you implement JusticeWeb, you would read it as well. Everything that we cover today, will be in the help guide. Okay? So please use it. We are going to be looking at our request management. Well, let's look at server configuration first. So I showed you a little snippet of this. Cases available for public payment. You must select those case types that you will allow to be paid online. Maybe I don't want my felonies. Maybe I don't want my juveniles paying online. Case statuses. Which ones, which case statuses, or case status, I guess you could do one, will you allow people to search for and pay online through public payments? What obligation types can I pay online? So you specify those. And then you can specify a message if that case is not found. Okay, so we've got that little bit of setup in there. Other thing is we have a user that runs JusticeWeb. That user must be a part of the collecting agencies that you want to expose online. If they're not a member of that collecting agency, they do not see that money. Or it's just like in JustWare, right? All right, request management. The requests that we're going to be looking at are our number 6s and 7s. So number 7 is our public payment type. You must set up a specific public payment type. So right here you give it a code, a description, you specify the type. This public payment code type is what determines that that request shows up for us before we log into JusticeWeb. You expose it to a server and you give it a default queued status. In my e-filing class we talk more about the queue. If you have more questions about the queue, please hit your F1 and go into the help guide. Okay? We have an approval document. This will say, we call it a payload. So whatever somebody is filling out is saved in a payload, and we can store that on the case so that you have record of the transaction that transpired on the web. Okay? Other things that we can do. We can send an email to the, if they're logged in, we can send an email to the person that's logged into JusticeWeb. If they're not logged in, we're not sending them an email unless you capture it somewhere, right? You can show the summary, which is the payload, and we do not apply financial obligation types, non-collectible financials to financial types. So those are the things that we can set up. Now, to pay a public payment, I've got 3 pages. So this one I've got, it's not really complex, there's just 3 pages. I've got those ordered. If you were in my other classes, you know how to do this ordering, but it says page 1 is terms and conditions page, and it goes to page 2. See how to read that? Page 2, I've got 2 page 2s, so I can pay the fine, or I go to a blank page that says, please contact our office. Okay, so this one, to pay the fine or the fee, I've got a label, I've got a button that will show up on page 1. See how it says parent button? My parent, so page 2 comes from page 1. So on the parent it will say, I plead guilty now, let me pay. And on the other one it says, I don't plead guilty, I'm not guilty. And that one's the one that says, then contact our office. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Let's look at those pages. So we set up a request that have pages on there. I can find each of these pages. So pay, fine, or fee terms, and I do recommend that you label those somewhat similar so that you can find those. So here's my terms page. I add a field to that. The field that I've added is from the miscellaneous, and it's just a label. You can put basic HTML in there. I've got a href or an anchor tag in there. I'm using the paragraph, so we'll see how that looks. This page is a generic page. My fine or a fee is a search page. On the search page, if you did a search for this, in the help guide, it would tell you that a last name and a number is all that JusticeWeb regards on the search page. If you add a first name, a date of birth, social security number, or any other field, it is not regarded in the search. On the search page, we're presented with 2 other fields. Those are the only ones that are available. I have seen people put a reCAPTCHA or a CAPTCHA on their search page, and that works. So if you need to know what a CAPTCHA is, we can talk about that. All right, so a last name and a number. So once the fields are on the page, And these are added for me automatically. It's kind of nice. Developers getting ahead on that. We've got our properties for those fields. So on a last name, it is required and it is visible. This ties into your last name search field in JustWare. And then we've got a number field. I changed the title to say enter your case or docket number. And I said I'm going to search on the court number. If instead of the court number, I wanted them to type in their citation number, maybe I would select the law number, and instead of case, I would say, enter your citation. Awesome. I love this keyboard. Citation number, right? And so whatever I type in the title is what's showing up for me over here, kind of a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. All right, so I'm not going to make that change because I do want to type in my court. Well, actually, I'll do that. Okay, so now we're going to search on our law number. If I select multiple types, then what that does is it adds a little drop down and lets the user select, hey, I've got my citation number, I've got, okay. But for this one, we're just going to type in our citation number. Then the last page we've got is a blank page. I love these things. I put them in all over the place. Blank page is just simply a generic page that is blank. That means that I can put whatever message I want on there. And that just comes in from whatever I type in to my title field on the page. So for this blank page, I typed in the title. This title is what's going to show up for me on there. All right, so we've seen the setup. Now let's look at what that looks like on the web. So since I have a public payment type, I don't have to sign into JusticeWeb. When I click on that, there's my terms and conditions. There's my paragraphs. There's my anchor tag. That shows up for me. Things that did not was my bold and italics. I'm presented with two options. Well, let's read this. By paying this fine and fee, you are agreeing that you are guilty. When you submit the payment, your case will be disposed as no contest and it will be closed. If you don't want to plead guilty, then you go next and it says, then call us at our office or come down and speak with us. If you do agree, then we'll let you search for and pay on your case. Now I can change this order around. So we type in our last name. And we type in our case. I didn't save that, did I? So since I didn't save, it's going to ask me for my court number. So that's my court number right there. And we type that in. When we search, if that case meets the requirements to be able to pay online, then the full amount is presented to them. For this one, it is speeding on a snowmobile. I'm involved as the defendant. There's the court number. There's the amount due. Is this the right case? Better make sure before you pay and submit. Right? That's what the message says. So now we pay and submit. When we pay and submit, right here, bam! I just went out to Mercury. I don't have to be PCI compliant. They do this little form right here. See how it kind of, that's called an iframe. So this outer part is JustWare. And that little close button, that's JustWare. This internal part, that goes to a different site. Okay? They are PCI compliant. For Mercury payments, they have specific information that I need to fill out. They gave me a test account, so I don't have to use my credit card number while I'm playing around in here. Kind of like that. So let's enter that information. Now with this one, I've got specific information for amounts that are over $11. So I've got to use one of these numbers down here. Let's grab that. So we enter that in. We got our other information. Let's see, 12, 15. And name doesn't matter. Address does. All right, so once I enter that information in the payment portal, I click submit. Now your payment processor is processing that payment, saying, hey, do they have funds? And the payment processors I've seen, they do a pre-authorization, just checking to make sure it's a valid number and that they actually have an account with that holder. And then they do a post-authorization. So with this one, the customer can print a receipt. No email is sent because we didn't capture an email. If your payment provider captures an email, they can send that Otherwise, your customer needs to print that receipt. And we close. This submits that request through JusticeWeb. It's auto-approved, so it goes through the queue and will show up on your case. Okay, now what just happened was my user entered their credit card information. They did that so my court clerk did not have to. But it's as if my court clerk went to that case, here's my case, and they entered a payment on the payment row. So we go to our payment snap-in, financial, on a name record, right? Case file doesn't walk up to the window, a person does. We go to name record. You guys, you've been to my trainings before, if you laugh at that joke. All right. So we know that a person walks up to the window to pay a payment, not a case. So we go out to our name record, we refresh, and we have a specific payment type that it comes through. This one's an online. That could be labeled as credit card. The amount that was paid, and for a public payment, it works just like setting the for case. You guys use that? You can select the specific case, right? And that money gets applied to that for case. The reference number. This is the transaction code from the payment processor. Shows up for you right there so that you can track that. So that you know how to link those payments up with your payment processor. You will get a report. You will be able to log in and generate a report from your payment processor on every payment. And then you need to batch those. Anybody familiar with those? You got to batch those so that that money actually gets taken from that and released into your account. The payer comes through as the person responsible for paying. Now, if Grandpa and Grandma entered their credit card information, JustWare doesn't care. Payment processor records it as Grandpa and Grandma's information. But in JustWare, for public payment, because we don't know who they are, we assume we're just going to put the pay by name in there, right? We get the receipt number so we can see how that information was distributed, following the auto allocation rules, right? Now, we also said that on the case, we want to store our payload in the filing cabinet. So on the filing cabinet, guess what? We have a public payment payload in there. It's a certain type of document, right? And it is read-only. I set that up in my documents. And I have that page set up for me. And it shows me that they paid. And I've got the date stamp from the filing cabinet to show me the date that that payment was accepted into the system.
Does this work on 5.9 as well, or is it going to be 5.10?
This works on 5.9 as well,
Okay, good.
I believe. So a lot of the payment stuff is in 5.10, but I do believe this was something that existed in 5.9.
It doesn't show you the name of the credit card holder?
This one shows me just the search results. No, it's not, because that information was entered on a different site, right?
That site didn't pass it back to you.
They did not, but I do have the reference number, and I can log into that site and find the credit card holder. So, great question. Okay, so the other thing that I did right there, notice now, my case is closed, and I've got on my sentence judgment tab, I've got dispose of guilty, right? They agreed, they said I'm guilty, and I said, you say you're guilty, and I'm going to dispose your case and close it. I have a business rule that worked. When I made that payment, I had a business rule that went out and closed my case. It says, a payment was made, dispo, and close the case. It's a very simple rule. It simply is checking for that public payment payload to show up in my filing cabinet, because I know that my request returns that, and it's going to dispo. It'll put no contest as the plea, and guilty is my dispo. Then it closed my case. My clerks didn't have to enter the payment, and they didn't have to do anything else on the case, and it's done. Now, what happens since that case is closed, for the person who just traveled through my jurisdiction, got the traffic ticket, they just paid it. If they created an account in my system, that case wouldn't even show up for them. Because when we log into JusticeWeb, it shows my active cases. That case is closed, it does not show up.
I have a question.
Sure.
Some courts potentially do not take credit cards in person. Do you all recommend that they take it over the phone, whatever they need to do, and then process it through ePayments?
Okay, great question. What do you guys think? How would you solve that? So somebody calls over the phone and they want to pay by credit card. You could take that through JusticeWeb and enter that information for them. What else? Directly through JusticeWeb, okay. Any of you guys do this today? You go to your payment provider site and you enter it in there. Right? So they provide that mechanism, and that's probably how you do that today, taking credit cards. Or you go to a terminal that matches that. Great question. Okay, so you could search for their case and do it through JusticeWeb. I would just go to the payment provider website and enter that in.
It takes checks too. Put the numbers in to take checks as well.
Your payment provider would have to do that for you. So, oh wait, it's not in here, but they were looking into that, and it seems like Plug and Pay does that. I don't believe Mercury does.
And if the office takes a credit card, they get less than the full amount. Credit card takes its bite, correct?
So you got credit card processing fees that you want to think about. Yes, that is a future enhancement to JusticeWeb. Plug and Pay is able to do that. It's working today in Guam. They ding the card 2 times, one time for the credit card fees and the other time for the amount that the court needs. So they're handling that with their payment provider.
So currently you can't set that up to charge to recoup those fees?
You can, but it's a manual thing. So there's one of the next items after the mobile is, I'm told, to get this credit card fees hooked up. Okay, great questions.
We're not set up yet with the ePay, but I understand, since you asked, you're saying that they can pay online, what if they come in person and wish to pay with a card? They can still swipe it and then the court has to enter the information?
Okay, so did everybody hear that question? What if they show up at the court, they want to pay with the card, you swipe it, and the clerk still has to enter the information? Yep. Yep.
They don't, yeah, it's something like
Any business rule, did you check for any other obligations?
For other obligations, I do not. Because I know that a public payment requires payment in full on that case. You cannot pay more, you cannot pay less, it must be the full amount. So I did not do another check, but you can.
Okay.
Yep. And I have created business rules in the past that do that. Great questions. Okay, the other thing we can do, and I've done this. So on a case, let's look at Sierra Mist. We got our case involvements, and we refresh. Let's just see what that looks like. So now we've got our closed traffic case. If I wanted then to log out, and on this civil case, let's make sure we've got playing domino on Sunday. This guy, don't think, in Utah, did you know this is actually not a statute in Utah? But it's in our test system. All right, so playing dominoes on Sunday. And we have a financial obligation of $75 on this case. We have not paid on that case yet. So I can hook up a business rule, which I have done, that says when I change that status to waiting for payment, so we just added our $75 filing fee on there. We change that status to waiting for payment. I've got a business rule that goes out and it says, hey, when you say I'm waiting for payment, find the person responsible and send them an email. So first thing I'm doing is I'm looking for case information, checking for that status. I go out, I find that individual. Let's see if I can drag this down a little bit. I find that individual, and then I send him a notification saying, hey, we're waiting for payment. So when I make that change, and we go out there, it says, hey, I'm waiting for payment on this case. Will you log into JusticeWeb and make that payment now? Is that cool? So now, they shouldn't be walking in. You can provide those instructions of, hey, you don't have to come down to our office. We're going to free up all kinds of lines. We're going to free up our court clerks so they can get other work done. And when they pay online, we can close your case. Because you're going to pay in full. Okay? So this is the one that just came through. That was from earlier. All right, so Sierra. And look, I'm pulling in. That's their first name, right? I'm pulling that right from JustWare. There's their case they need to pay on. So if they needed to log in to JusticeWeb, or they wanted to search, right? They just copy that. They copy that. They go to JusticeWeb. They don't even have to sign in. They hit the pay a fine or a fee. It says, yep, I'm going to pay that fee. Here's my last name. Here's my case number. And I do a search. Uh-oh. I did something wrong. So why didn't that show up for me? I got all this cool stuff set up. We look at the case. It's a civil type. It's a filing fee. Case waiting for payment. So we've got to look at our setup. So if we go into our server configuration, this is one of the design considerations. We've got a civil case waiting for payment. Now what types of payments can we pay online? I can't pay filing fees online. If I make that one little change and save, now I go back to JusticeWeb and there it is. Okay, so those must be set up. And if they're not, then they simply cannot pay online. All right, does that make sense? How that works? So it just those little switches we got to flip, right? All right, sure.
If they don't know the case number, they have to know the case number to go through this process?
Absolutely. Yep. And that's because this right here is saying I'm using the for case. Where do we draw that for case from? That little field, right? We've got to have it. We've got to know which case we're paying on.
Most of the time they don't know what they do.
Well, and so what did we do in our email? Should they know their case number? You betcha.
And how do you get their email? Curiosity. It's like if it's traffic and they issue a citation, how would the court know the email?
So, great question. For this example, I logged in to JusticeWeb. So when you submit a request for an account, it captures your email address. So for me, that's how I'm doing it. Also, so I just set my own user up, and I knew that I needed an email address. It did exist, but you're exactly right. If the email address did not exist on the name record, they're not getting an email. Even if I have all that cool stuff set up, they will not get an email. You got to have that. So a traffic ticket, it may be something that is posted online, right? But on your website, you just say, hey, you got a traffic ticket, click on this link, enter your citation number, your last name, and you can pay that payment. And you never capture that. You never know their email address. You never know that.
Couldn't you provide an option? You know how they're saying that some of them don't know their case numbers? Maybe you provide an option, case number, or your citation number, or maybe your
Yes.
full name.
Yep, and we can do that, right? So you must require a number, case number, and their last name, so that we know. Because what if they typed in Begay for the nation, right? They typed in Begay as the last name, and that's it. You don't want them seeing everybody else's cases in there, right? What if it's Smith or Johnson or, whatever for your organization? You need that case number so we can find the right Begay.
What about date of birth?
Date of birth?
I think it's just for our sake, it'd be just a citation number.
Okay. Guess what, guys? Battery's gonna. My machine is gonna pass out. All right. So these are great questions. Again, the help guide. Yeah, that's right. Help guide is going to be your friend for these questions because it is going to answer these for you. Can you add a date of birth to that search field? Yes. Will it do anything for you? Will JustWare regard that? No. No, it will not. That is in the help guide as a note. It is bolded. It is highlighted. It will not. Read that help guide. Okay. So, a couple of concepts, right? Our objectives were, we wanted to look at payments. We looked at public payments so far. How that translates into JustWare, right? You have just offloaded your court clerk work to the public. That is awesome. And they will pay you for that. You guys, man, you got the greatest job on people paying to do your job. All right, so requests. So that was our public payments. The next thing we want to do is we want to look at our payment request, okay? This is a name payment. We set this up. It's got a code. You give it a description. Request type. Now instead of a 7, it's a 6. We expose it to a web server. We've got a default queued status. We can change that to queued if you wanted. And our approval document, our payload is coming in, not as a public payment payload, right? As our JusticeWeb payload. This is what I use to trigger my business rule. And that we're not saying an email, we're not showing summary. This has a single page on it. That payment page is a specific type. It is a payment type. When you select that type, JustWare adds a new field. It's a payment amount field. That payment amount field has 3 fields on it. Minimum amount, account balance, and other. You have the same abilities under the field properties to make those visible or invisible. There is no validation on the other. They can pay more, they can pay less than the account balance. So you determine whether that is available for your organization. I'm going to make that invisible for the first experience, and we will change that for the next experience. All right. So, and I actually saved this time, so this will actually show up correctly. So now I'll have a minimum due and account balance. This time I'm not saying terms and conditions. I don't have a business rule that's firing off. This is somebody that logs into JusticeWeb. You may set them up on a payment plan or other, and so they know I'm going to log into JusticeWeb to make this payment. So when they sign in, they see their active cases and they see their payments. On the payments, the account summary shows the next 3 payments, not all payments, just the next 3, and the last 3 payments made in their payment history. Okay? Then down below we see the next 2 and the account balance. Those are the same because all of my filing fees are due for today. The payments, when I click the Make Payments, allows me now some options. But I don't get to determine, I don't get to decide which case I want to pay this on. So this works as if your clerks are in JustWare on a name record, right? Because the name shows up at the window, not a case, on the financials row, and they're going to take an online payment of $75 or whatever the person types in, right? It does not choose the for case. If you want to use the for case, the only option from the web is a public payment. Okay? But the same thing will happen. That money will be auto-allocated. That reference number is going to come back through the system, and you'll get the reference number. Okay? So, that's what we're going to do in JusticeWeb. Now, what we've got is we've only got 2 options. I can pay the minimum, and I can pay the account balance. But we saw that I really have 3 different cases, 3 different filing fees I need to pay. So if I wanted the individual, if I wanted to pay $75, I didn't want to pay the full $225, what are my options?
All or nothing.
Yeah.
All or nothing. Well, for this one it is, right? And for the public payment. It's all or nothing. But guess what? Public payment is per case, right? So public payment, I may have a different workflow, a different look for that. But on my $75, if I wanted to pay that $75 and that $75 only, the mechanism for JusticeWeb is the public payment. Now it's $75. Now, what else can I do? What else affects this? So I've got another option in my JusticeWeb system configuration for my page. I can make this visible and allow them to specify another amount. So now, when I go to make a payment in JusticeWeb, I can say, hey, I just want to pay $75. Now, when I do this and I work through this workflow, how's that money going to be allocated?
Which this rule is on allocation.
By the allocation priorities and percentages, right? And that is outlined in the help guide. I also put that in the little handout that you can download and take back to your office and reference in the design considerations. It will look for payment schedules first, oldest due date next, obligation priority, and percentage. That is how it works. So it's going to look for this, in this scenario, it's going to pay off. Well, for this one I specified, no, this is my payment, right? So it's going to look for, see if I have any payment schedules. Then it's going to look at oldest due date. So whichever one was entered into the system first. All these were entered as due for today. So it's going to look at the one that was added first today, because it's actually looking at the timestamp. Then it's going to allocate that money by the priority and percentage on that case. Okay? So, things we can do. What if I wanted to set this up on a pay plan? How does that affect JusticeWeb? So I can set up a payment plan from my case or from my name, right? If you have a question about that, you can go to the help guide. There is a little instruction video. It takes 2 minutes, maybe 3, to see how to set up a payment plan. We have a payment schedule view as well. So some of you guys have the payment schedule just built right into your snap in your regular session. Others of us, we go out here. This is the default. So here, I can say, this is my fines schedule. Make it a priority. And now I can say, hey, I want you to pay monthly on the 1st of every month, starting today. And I'm going to let JustWare determine how much each of those payments will be. But I'm going to give you 6 months. Or I could say I'm going to give you 6 times, twice a month to come in and pay. But this one is monthly. We'll go on the 5th of every month. And then we select our filing fees, right? Here's the cases, here's the court numbers, and we're going to say, you know what, across all those cases, I'm going to combine all those into a single payment plan, and now you owe me $37.50. It's due on the 5th. Why did it jump to October 5th for the next due date? We've already passed the 5th. It can't be in September, right? Okay, so on the web, what does that do to us on the web? So when we go to make a payment now, it says, minimum due is $37.50. Why did that change? Because that's the minimum due, right? They worked something out with the court. It said, hey, I'm going to give you 6 times. If we were to refresh out here on the web, now look, our next payment due, 10/5, $37.50. The total balance is right here. My account summary just changed. See how that changed? So now if I make okay, so see how that changes, right? I just overrode my due date. If I look at the case, this is how you change those due dates. If I look at the case, financial, this one says my due date is 9/19. Can I change that once the row has been saved? Nope, you got to delete it, right? Or, guess what? Payment schedule overrides that, right? According to the auto allocation rules, payment schedules first. Then we look at due dates. Okay? So I just overrode that date with my payment schedule. Now, we can make a minimum due. That'll come through. We'll do that really quick. Maybe make a payment. Minimum due. This one we'll use the same. Credit card. Please don't write that credit card number down and go try to purchase something at Walmart or Macy's. It will not work. It will not.
This also works for the EA's offices, correct? Those courts.
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
Payment schedules, have y'all try to set up any recurring payments? Usually it's set up on the back end through a credit card company. Have y'all interfaced that and tried that yet?
I have not, but somebody brought that up yesterday. They said, hey, can we do that? That would have to be something done through, because we're not storing credit cards.
Right.
The payment provider will.
But I'd also need a business rule to know that on that day to go trigger it, so that when it processed via the web, their web portal will bring it back in and go out and make sure that that got captured.
Yeah, and we do have a new business rule object that triggers the API, an API message object.
Okay.
The tricky part would be knowing when the customer set that date. Because you would want to capture and see, I don't know if that would work. That's an interesting scenario. Because JusticeWeb has to initiate and send that information to the payment processor so that it will
I
send
need
it
to be
back.
able to pull it and not push it to them.
Yeah, so I wonder if it could be done. Okay, here's how it was allocated. Across two different fines, because my priorities and percentages said they're both the same priority, and it allocated equal amounts because they were set at 50% percentage. Can I say percentage one more time? Percentage. All right, percentage is percentage. So, let's say that customer needs a refund of their money. And they say, hey, you processed that, or I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to plead guilty. Or I didn't want you to process that payment, so you void it. The money goes back on the case. Does that money go back on their card? No. There's another step outside of JustWare, right? Because JustWare didn't take the money, I didn't take your money, Udom didn't take your money, it's not sitting in my pocket. It's out there in Mercury, right? So you go out to Mercury and you must also refund that money there, which pushes the money back to the card. Okay, so that's an extra consideration. Now you need a report. You need a report that pulls in your reference numbers from JustWare. Here's what I process, here's the cases, here's the names, here's my court number. And you'll print out a report from your payment provider saying here's all the payments we took today. Do they match up? Are your numbers matching up? Now, in JustWare, you have in your accounting tools, you have the payments received by user. So you can go out and see by payment type what money was received, right? But that report, by default, by stock in JustWare, doesn't pull in the, I don't know, there we go. It does not pull in that notes field. So you've got payments received by user or the payments report. This one will show me that for my collecting agency, how much money have I taken in today. This is actually including yesterday, so the training we've done. So online payments, we've taken $363. Oh, there's my reference numbers. Fantastic. For the voided payments. There's a reference number for the online payments I've taken. So can I take that and match this dollar amount and these transactions up with a payment provider? That's pretty slick, right? It's new. Welcome to 510. Glad they were thinking that through. All right. So voiding payments. Now, what if? Let's set up a new guy. Let's go. Favorite soda. Diet Pepsi. Who likes Diet Pepsi? All right, we got one Pepsi drinker. Pepsi. Control-Shift-N. You guys know these shortcuts? If not, they're in the help guide. I would challenge you each to memorize 10. No 10 shortcuts. Control-Shift-N, new name. Diet Pepsi. And for the very astute, there's my email. So I can get those emails. All right, so now we got a new user. We're going to set this up. Let's say they've got a traffic ticket, all right? We're running through a scenario here. And we've got 15 minutes. Fantastic. All right, we're going to run through a scenario. So let me go through, set up my JusticeWeb. What I'm going to do is hook up my user. So we were talking about the back door a little bit earlier. If any of you guys were listening when you first came in, we can PCI type. We'll get that guide. So I'm just using the tabs. So if you don't know how to navigate JustWare, where can you find that information? Help and the quick start guide. Okay, there are 2 methods. I love that guide. It is awesome. Okay, so now we got Pepsi. I've read it. I would expect that you read it as well. Diet Pepsi. Let's log out from Sierra Mist. We'll sign in, and now we're hooked up to Diet Pepsi. Diet Pepsi does not have a case. I have file a traffic ticket. File a traffic ticket. We type in our citation number, 07. Adds 2 charges, also adds obligations. That business rule rocks. So it adds my case, adds my obligations, adds my charge. Well, it's a simple little e-filing snippet. So in the guide, you'll see one for civil. I'm speeding on a snowmobile, and now I owe $235. I've got court costs, defensive driving, and fine. They're all due today. If I try to make a payment, because I need to make it to defensive driving, and they require that I pay before I show up, how do I do that? If I click this make payment, I've got a minimum due. If I do an other and I just pay $75 for that class, how do I know that I paid, that I would be paying on that? How do you know I would be paying on that class fee? What's that?
Want to be emailed to you?
Be emailed to me? Okay, so we could, but how would you make sure? What if I went out here and I did a search and I said, hey, I'm paying my traffic ticket for Pepsi. And I know the court number because hopefully it was emailed to me. Let's see, Pepsi, find this guy, find my case. Case is sitting here. And 6, I'd switch right back and go with financials. We're going to wait. We're in 510. There's my obligations that I've got to pay, right? And I go to my name record. And on the name record, if I'm looking at financials, I owe $235. So what I really wanted is I wanted my court number.
It was right there.
Court number right there. And I type that in and I search. And it tells me $235. How in the world am I going to pay that $75 class fee? Did Newdon not think this through? What are our options? Can I go back? If I look at that case, can I change my due date, right? Because I know JustWeb is going to pay that based on the due date. And I just had a business rule drop those in for me. But my court clerks aren't used to setting that date. And I can't change that for auditors that want to come in and say, hey, you can't change your dates. That was what was ordered by the judge, right? So my options are I can delete that. I can delete that row and re-add it. But now I just defeated the purpose, right? What are my options? Payment schedule. Is that my tool? Sweet. And guess what? The help guide, if I don't know how to do that, it'll tell me how to do that with a little video and step-by-step instructions. That's pretty nice. Thanks, Newdon. That's awesome. Let's create a payment schedule. This time I'm going to go from the case record. Okay, don't let this throw you off. I was not a fan of having that here. I like it from a name record. A person walks up to the window and pays a payment. A case, a manila folder cannot walk up and pay a payment. Payment schedules. Payment schedules is my tool. Now I can create a payment schedule. Here's my class fees. In my class fees, I can say, you know what? I want that due today. And you get one occurrence. Come in and pay that off for my defensive driving. Now I can also say, hey, for the fines and fees, let's put schedule in there. Okay. For the fines and fees, I'm going to allow them to pay that every 30 days. And they've got, let's go, 4 occurrences. So 4 months to pay that off. And I'm going to let JustWare determine that amount. You can, of course, you can change those schedules. So now, when we save that, look what it does in JusticeWeb. So if I'm here, so is the total amount, right? Because the public pay is all or nothing. But it's for a specific case. For a specific case, so drag on. But if I come in here, and now look, next due is $115. Oh, because I got my stinking fines and fees set up in there as well. So fines and fees and my class fees. So can I change that? I did not change that. So can I say that my start date for the fines and fees is the 25th? And will JusticeWeb now, right? Because I can't change my obligations. I can just change the arrangements that I make with the individual when they need to make those payments. I'm not changing the obligation. They work that out with me. I agreed as a court or as an agency that they could change those dates. So now when I make a payment, I've got a minimum due. If I make that minimum due payment, what's it going to be allocated to first? The oldest obligation, the next due, right? So when we make that payment, when I make it through typing all this in, that money and I'm going to do this really quick so we can print that off. We go okay, we come back here and look, JusticeWeb just refreshed, and guess what? We got the pre-op. We got the pre-op. That was a valid card, but we haven't got the post-op back yet. So this is in a pending payment status. There's a report in JusticeWeb Administration that allows you to see those pending payments. And it actually goes by status. But if we go back to JusticeWeb, back one step, there's pending online payments right there that would show you any of those transactions that are waiting to be processed. Okay, so there is a report, and you don't thought through that too. Well, the payment processor's taking a while. Okay, so in JusticeWeb. Now, what did that money get applied to? Under our account summary, now look. Let's refresh. Let me refresh. All right. Class fees just got paid. And depending on how you have those obligations set up, that money was directed into that bucket, right? So now if we go and we look at our voucher screen, we should have money for the class fees that we can either cut the check to, or that money goes directly to their account, however you got that to be. Okay, and now I've just got my fines and fees that I can pay off. Is that cool? So we have two options in JusticeWeb to pay. We've got the public option, which is pay all or nothing. This one's cool, works really well for traffic tickets. Now, if we hit that, and we go out and we say, yep, I want to pay on that case for Pepsi, and we have our docket number, can I copy that? I cannot copy that. That's great. I've got that typed in already. So CT003. Anybody that knows me knows that I have a horrible short-term memory. All right, so I can't remember those things. $160 due. It's all or nothing, right? Whether you got a payment schedule set up or not. All or nothing. From the payment option, we have the 3 options. Now, what would happen? The minimum due is $40. What happens if I pay $50? What happens in JustWare if you enter a payment? What's that?
Be applied to the next due.
It would be applied to the next due. Okay, very good. Who in here is on 510? 510, 510, 510? You're on 510? Okay, and then we've got older versions. How about 5.9? The nation, you're on 5.9? Okay, in 5.10, this is where I saw this show up. There's a new little setting. If we go into our system administration, this is in 5.10, I believe only, unless they went back retroactively. Code tables, application parameters. Usually this is a set it and forget it. They added a new parameter down here of how to handle allocation for payment schedules. You can add the extra amount added to the next payment or subtract from the current balance. And it's determined now in application parameters. In previous versions, so we're okay.
We just went to 10.
Oh, you went to 10? Okay, fabulous. In older versions of JustWare, it was determined on how you set up your payment schedule. So depending on what you selected in there. So now, it's an application-wide set, okay? And right now, we've got that set so that it will be added to the next payment. Now, what would happen? So, great answer. Whoever gave that answer. That was fabulous. Fabulous. So, $160. What would happen if I paid $200? Now, what's JustWare going to do?
Payment.
The payers overpay, exactly. It works just like JustWare does, right? So if I was working in JustWare, I was on the name record because the name walks up to my window and they bring me money, and I took a payment for more, and I said cashier's check even, because they walked in with a cashier's check for $245 or $253 because there was some dyslexia that happened there. That money goes into the overpay account, right? Because it's more than the account balance. And when it shows up in the overpay account, where else does it show up? On your voucher screen. Okay? That can happen. That can happen in JusticeWeb. All right. So, we covered the objectives of the class. Can you pay class fees online? Can you pay just your fines and fees online? Okay. If you intermix obligations that you can pay online and you cannot pay online, that search breaks down, right? Your configuration determines what people can see online. So if you're trying to be tricky with that, then you'll be severely disappointed. Class fees. So if you did not want people to pay class fees online, but you do want them to pay their traffic ticket, and on your traffic case, you have their traffic ticket and court fees. Will they be able to pay that online? No, because you didn't allow them to pay their class fees online. Okay, so you got to allow that kind of stuff. You've got control over this. So we talked about that. Payment schedules. Those affect what the user sees online. So make them descriptive. Start using them if you're not. They're awesome. That's how you override the due date. Move things around because you're not doing that on the payment road.
Can you overpay with a credit card, but it'll only take what's due? Does that make sense?
No. Because what JusticeWeb does is it's just taking whatever amount you enter in there or select here, and it passes that through like an API call to your credit card company and says, they said they wanted to pay that much money. Other things that I know are considerations is, what if you get somebody that's malicious and they know that you're getting charged fees? So they come in and they say, oh, I'm gonna make 50-cent payment. And you still get charged $3 for every transaction or whatever, right? They can still do that. You allow them to. So if you want to stop that, your option is go into your administration and not make that an option for them. Make that invisible. Okay? So you've got control. All right. Other questions? Sure.
Can you make that window for any payment, can you set a minimum? It won't take you validate it where it says it has to be at least the minimum?
Currently not. That would be nice. Yeah. I would like to see it there. Okay. Other questions?
I got one, Jay.
All right.
Just based on your experience in working with other entities, on average, how long does it take for the collecting agency to post the money to the courts? And
Okay, great question. So how long does it take for the payment processor to put that money in your account? You work through a process that's called batching. And you specify how frequently you batch that money from the payment processor into your bank account. But you must work through that process. So if anybody's ever worked fast food and you've had to work one of those credit card sliders, and at the end of the day, the manager goes in and they batch from that device, you will do the same thing online. Okay?
You go in your configuration, they'll send it for you at a certain time every day.
Oh, great.
so whatever payments you receive for the day, you can batch it down by the end of the day?
Okay, should we cut out early, or would you like to see multiple collecting agencies?
Yeah, this is it.
Multiple collecting agencies. This is an easy one. So multiple collecting agencies. What we've got is, so we've got our case, right? And this is our speeding up while on a snowmobile. They must live in the winter months. So, okay. So for this one, we would add another, and I've got this fine for collecting agency 2. It's $145 instead of $135, and Pepsi needs to pay that. So we've got collecting agency 1, collecting agency 2. Now, when we save that on our case, and we go to JusticeWeb, since those are set up as different collecting agencies now, we have $145 that is due to the court collectors and $160 that are due to the conference collecting agency. So now if I need to make a payment, I'm paying to those specific accounts. And I set those up in JustWare under my agency accounts, right? So it's got a name record, we got to go through all this. And we set up our obligations to point to specific accounts. So there's my court collectors, and that obligation points to one of, there we go, right there, $145, right? Liability that we need to pay to the court collectors.
What happens if they make an error and hit the wrong one and it goes through?
Then they would have to void the payment and work backwards. But we still track all of that. So that was easy. Those guys hungry out in the room, you know, everything, that's going to go on. Nope, that's easy.
So by us, the nation, employing collecting agency or whatever site we go with, somebody from Cuba can pay their citation twice and as long as they got their ticket number.
Yep. Now, and actually, they would need a JusticeWeb account to make that payment. So what I just did, remember, and I hope that you will go back and review those documents I put together, because there's nuggets on design considerations and specifically on multiple collecting agencies. What I just did is I made it available in my public payments. But now, if I pay a fine or a fee and I want to pay on that case, and I type in my docket number, and I search, I cannot find it. JusticeWeb is not smart enough to know that I've got multiple collecting agencies on this case. Okay? So that is the challenge that you will have to overcome for public payments. Now for payment request types, it's easy, it's done. And the difficulty I found is trying to understand your configuration, how you got it set up, and then how do you communicate that to a user? Hey, yeah, you can pay online, but not in this instance or this instance or this instance, right? So if you're trying to be restrictive with what people can pay online, it gets more complex. All right, easy peasy. Those business rules, that rocks. Right? Send them an email, close those cases, dispo those cases. Business rules is a lot of fun. ePay is a lot of fun. Thanks for coming, you guys.